Have you ever met someone brilliant, maybe top of their class, great at debating, incredible memory, yet they make the dumbest decisions when it comes to real life, like dating a walking red flag, or investing in a shady crypto scheme, or staying in a job that clearly makes them miserable? It's confusing, right? Shouldn't intelligence protect us from making bad decisions? Section 1. What we think intelligence is. Let's start with a quick reality check. Most of us assume being smart means you're naturally good at making the right choices. But what we often call intelligence is usually just analytical ability. Things like solving math problems, understanding complex ideas, or scoring high on an IQ test. But decision making isn't just about solving logic puzzles. It's about handling emotion, uncertainty, relationships, and risk. Things IQ tests don't measure. So someone can be incredibly intelligent on paper, but still miss the emotional, social, or practical cues that help us make good decisions in everyday life. This is where things start to go wrong. Intelligence can become a kind of armor. The smarter you are, the more likely you are to believe you've already considered everything. And when you start to trust your brain more than you trust reality, you lose the ability to course correct. This is what psychologists call the bias blind spot, the tendency to believe that other people are biased, but you're the exception. Smart people are actually more likely to fall into this trap because they're used to being right. In school, in debates, even at work, they're rewarded for having answers. So when they make a bad decision, they don't always question themselves. They question the situation, or worse, the people around them. It's not arrogance in the classic sense. It's more like a quiet overconfidence, a belief that if something feels off, it's probably the world, not them. Section 2. Mental gymnastics and emotional blindness. Here's where it gets even trickier. Smart people are often very good at explaining their decisions, even when they're bad ones. They can spin a story, build a case, stack logic on top of logic to defend a choice that was actually made emotionally. They're not being dishonest, they're just really skilled at rationalization. And because they're so good with words or data or logic, it's easy for them to convince themselves it's the right call. They may ignore their gut, dismiss discomfort, or explain away red flags because the story makes sense on paper. But decisions aren't made on paper. They're made in messy, unpredictable, emotional reality. And that's a space where intelligence doesn't always help, especially if the emotional intelligence isn't in the mix. Section 3. The overthinking trap. Now let's talk about overthinking. Smart people often see more options, more nuance, more possible outcomes, which sounds great until it freezes them. You want to make the best decision, so you dig deeper, second guess, map out every possible scenario, and suddenly you're stuck. This is known as analysis paralysis, the inability to act because you're thinking too much. Ironically, someone with less mental horsepower might make a quicker, more confident decision just by trusting their instincts. It might not always be the right choice, but at least it's a choice. In contrast, smart people sometimes delay too long, or worse, panic, and make a snap judgment just to escape the discomfort of indecision. Section 4. Intelligence without wisdom. One of the most important distinctions in psychology is between intelligence and wisdom. Intelligence is about knowing facts. It's about learning fast and solving complex problems. Wisdom, though, that comes from experience, from failure, from reflection. It's knowing what not to do. A person can have a high IQ but low self-awareness. They can memorize theories about human behavior but still struggle with their own emotions. Because wisdom isn't about being clever. It's about being grounded. Smart people often need to fail a few times before they realize that good decisions aren't just about being right. They're about being realistic, humble, and self-aware. Section 5. How to be smart and wise. So how do you avoid falling into these traps? First, get comfortable being wrong. Seriously, question your assumptions. When something feels obvious, ask yourself why. Get curious about your own blind spots. Second, stay emotionally tuned in. Decisions aren't just math problems. They involve feelings, yours and others. And if you ignore that part, your logic can mislead you. Third, don't isolate your thinking. Talk it out with people you trust. The smartest people often have a sounding board, someone who helps them stay honest with themselves. And finally, accept that not every decision has a perfect answer. Sometimes, good enough really is good enough. Because being smart is great. But being wise? That's what actually protects you from dumb decisions.